Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I interview top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And I'm very excited about today's guest, Dr. Eric Recker. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Eddie. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today. I'm very excited to be here with you.
Yes, we're going to have an amazing conversation. You know, I'm all about processes and systems, and you have processes and systems that we're going to talk about. But the main thing I want to talk about is your journey and your inspiration of how you got to where you are now. And I'm going to read your bio because you have an amazing bio. But we're going to have like this conversation about all of those subjects and how you got to where you are now and how you are helping people achieve freedom in their businesses and their lives.
Sounds great.
Yeah, so here we go. All right, so you are a dentist, a husband, a father. I don't know if in that order, right? I mean, well, I guess you choose the order, but
sometimes it's all over the place.
Keynote speaker, a lead success coach. You are an author, a pilot, a mountain climber, and a recovering triathlete. Well, you're still probably doing some triathlon or not? Or that's recovering, meaning you're recovering from the last one, or you just stopped doing it?
Well, I stopped doing it. So recovering from being addicted to triathlon takes a long time. I don't know if it's 12 steps or 100 steps, but I'd say I'm still in that process.
I see. Okay. And in your second half of your life, you are committed to helping people shorter the distance to becoming their best version and learning to win now. I mean, that's your hashtag, win the now, right? So
yes, it is.
Yeah. So basically, let's start with your journey. How did you get from being a dentist to being now a coach, an author, a pilot, a mountain climber, you know, really living the life by design, right?
Yeah. So to get to where I'm at today, I have to go way back to the playground in elementary school when I was in second, third, fourth grade, and even through probably eighth grade, I was bullied. So I know a lot of people were bullied. The biggest part for me was that I just wasn't accepted, and it was really hard. So in my small town in Iowa, recess kickball at lunch was life. That was the most important thing. And so when you were told that you aren't good enough and you don't get to play, it would have been one thing if I was picked last. The harder part is that I wasn't allowed to play. So I remember being a third grader standing on the side of the field because everybody else was playing and making a pact with myself that I was going to be so darn good at everything that I did that nobody would ever not pick me. So that led to a life of relentless striving, achieving, pushing all boundaries, trying to live the biggest life I could to show everybody that I was good enough, which is crazy because those bullies moved on from me long ago. And I just realized within the last few years that that's actually what I was doing with my life. So that carried through from elementary school to high school, college, dental school. Being in the top 10 in my class wasn't good enough. I had to be even higher. And then started out running. That led to marathon, and then started on triathlon. That led to Ironman, and then climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And it just wasn't ever enough. So you can imagine in all of that I went through some cycles of burnout. And so a huge wave of burnout was hitting me right before COVID. And COVID obviously was the great disruptor. Our office had to be closed for 2 months. And during that time, I had a lot of time for self-reflection. And so I took that time, and it was during that time that I started on the Win the Now journey. That's when that phrase came to me, and when I started learning more about what it looks like to live present in your life, to be in the same place, both mind and body, to not be just stuck in the past, which I had been, or worried about the future, which I also was. So basically, my journey is one to learn how to live in the moment and understand that the one thing that we are guaranteed in life is what's right in front of us in the moment.
Absolutely. So let's talk about burnout. Okay, let's talk about a burnout that you see that you experience yourself as a business owner, and you've seen other experience. And I actually just wrote a blog post about it based on another interview that I did. And what are the lessons that you learned in order to actually avoid that burnout as a dentist, let's say?
Yeah. So burnout is sort of right on the edge for all of us, and we do have to be conscious of it. For me, seeing a whole slate of patients, whole schedule of patients, and also trying to manage a team, which I think a lot of dentists really struggle with, because we went to dental school to be dentists. We didn't go to dental school to be entrepreneurs. And I manage a team of 18 people. I now have a partner in my practice, which has been huge at decreasing my burnout. But when you have all those responsibilities, and then all of the other things I added to my life, the triathlon, coaching my kids in soccer, pilot, all of those different things, they just added more commitments, boards that I was on, things like that. So I really became overcommitted, and I was not good at taking care of myself. So to me, that's the equation for burnout. Now, whether we're overcommitted in the things that we sign up for, what we find ourselves in is sometimes we are overcommitted, and whether that's things that we've just said yes to, or whether that is things like too much time on screens, whether it is too much distraction. We have too many things going on in our life, and we are not spending enough time taking care of ourselves, not enough time recovering, so that we can fill ourselves back up, so that we can continue to do our jobs and live our lives.
Absolutely. How do you see systems and processes and boundaries part of one's life, but that doesn't impede the freedom? You know what I mean? Because, as a mountain climber, you have to have discipline. As a pilot, you have to have discipline, and you have to have systems. So how do you find a balance between too many systems and not enough systems?
Yeah, that's great. And when I fully find that answer, I'll be sure to get back to you.
Thank you. So let's break it down to something we can actually, because our listeners probably go, yeah, okay, well, we're all trying to do that.
Yeah.
Let me just rephrase it then. Let's talk about systems that work for you, because I think if you really look at what works, then you can do, like you said, win the now. So you have a system that works right now, you implement it and you use it, and then you move to the next one and the next one. So what are some of the systems that you implemented in your life that helped you to be able to step out of your practice? Because right now you are in your practice for 3 days a week, right? So
right.
Whether you're a dentist or you have, our listeners listening to us and they are entrepreneurs that want to step out of their business, the regular day-to-day business, and just follow their dream, help others, become a coach, whatever it is, right? How did you do that? How did you actually manage to extract yourself out of the practice and start the other business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, I had to take a leap. But first I had to take honestly a small but significant step. I had to find out, okay, this is the dream. This is what I want to do. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be there tomorrow. I might not even be there in a year. But what is one small but significant step that I can take towards what I want to do? So for me, one big step was to hire a coach. I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And I know that relationships are incredibly important in our lives. So I needed someone who was going to help me walk the journey. And so since I have been working with him, it has inspired me even more to want to help other people walk the journey. So I think one really important thing is just make sure you have good quality relationships in your life, people that are willing to walk alongside you. If you don't have that, you can hire someone to do that, and that can work really well. But probably the biggest thing for me, because in my dental practice, I'm scheduled all day. I know what I'm doing every 15 minutes for the entire day. On these other days when I'm working on what I call the umbrella of content, which is everything else that I do, that can be tough and I can get really distracted. So time blocking has been huge for me. And what I love about that question that you asked, and how I'm still trying to figure it out, is you come up with blocks. So today I have a couple podcasts that I'm recording. I have a couple coaching clients that I'm meeting with. And I'm working on my next newsletter that's going to come out next week, and a blog that I'm doing. So I have blocks of time that I've scheduled for each one of those. But even in the middle of those, I try to keep my blocks about 45 minutes and have a little 15-minute stress break in there. I know I'm probably going to look at email a little bit, but then I'll take 5 minutes and maybe just take some deep breaths. Maybe I'll go outside and walk around the block. Maybe I'll send a text message to somebody that I need to send one to. And then I know what the next block is going to be. So I've given myself the gift of knowing what I'm going to do. And then I have a time block today for exercise. I want to get on my bike and ride for a little while. And if I don't block that, then it's not going to happen. But then also I have a block from about 6 o'clock on for the rest of the night that is time with my wife. And that is time that I'm not going to do anything business wise. And we're going to have dinner, and we're probably going to go for a walk and do some other stuff like that. But that gift of knowing what I'm going to do with my time takes a lot of the distraction and ambiguity out of it.
Absolutely. Eric, you're very disciplined, obviously, to be a pilot, to climb mountains, to be such an athlete, obviously, and also to be a dentist, and be able to do everything together, right? So, I'm like you, very similar, very disciplined. So I don't have a problem if I block time and I do it. What I observed is that people struggle with the boundaries. People struggle with making that pact with themselves of like, yes, I block the time, but, then a client calls. So then I'm going to break that boundary and I'm going to take the call after 6 o'clock, right? Or I am going to, basically not abide by what I actually decided to do, because right now I don't feel like writing a blog. So that 45 minutes that I have allocated to writing a blog, I'm going to go do something else. What is your advice on how to actually keep to that schedule and develop that discipline? And you can refer to your other experiences of climbing mountains or being a pilot or whatnot. Like, how do you actually make sure that you keep the promise that you made yourself?
Yeah, a lot of it for me is knowing what it feels like when I've broken that promise, and remembering that when I have it, and I'm not perfect. I'm still doing, I say life is a series of experiments. That's what we do. We try something and see if it sticks. So maybe an hour time block isn't reasonable, but maybe a half-hour time block is reasonable. So what I encourage people to do is, let's figure out what works for you. My wife often tells me that I have a ridiculous amount of motivation, and if I could transfer that motivation to other people, then I could sell that for whatever I wanted to. But that's not really how it works. So I encourage people, just try it out. You don't have to time block your whole day. If you have a couple things you need to get done, make sure you get those blocked out so you get those done. And then if you need to kind of be a free range human for the rest of that time, then you can be a free range human for the rest of the time. But give yourself the gift of, how is this going to work in my schedule? How can I make this so I get my things checked off, so a week later I still don't have those things on my list? And then with the boundaries, like you said, it's amazing. As I've started speaking and coaching, I have people reach out to me all the time and say, hey, I'd love to grab 30 minutes of your time, or I'd love to grab some time. I just want to bounce some things off of you. And you have to be careful with that time. If that's not something that fits with what you're trying to do, then you end up giving away a whole bunch of your time for free. So I'm starting to steer those people towards my calendar and say, hey, and my coaching page, and say, hey, look, this is what I do. This is how I'm helping people. If this is something that you want to jump in and we can do a call about that and see if we're a good fit, great. And if they are, then they'll continue to go down that road. If not, it kind of works itself out. So we do have to boundary our time, because people will always take whatever they can get from us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the give and the take, and for sure. What is your ideal audience? Who is your ideal client and ideal audience for your speaking engagements and for the coaching?
Yeah. So I work with a lot of high achievers. I imagine most of the people who are listening to a business podcast about systems are definitely high achievers. But what I find is a lot of people find themselves stuck. They're not sure what's next. They've been defined in a role as this, and they're not sure that's what they want to do for the rest of their life, but they don't know where to process it. They don't know who to talk to. And I love to come in at that point, and we go through a process and help figure out, hey, what might the next chapter look like? What are some steps that we can take to realize that dream that you might not even know exists yet, so that you can believe that good days are ahead? Because or else if we stay by ourselves and let those thoughts stay internal to us, they can get us stuck, they can get us burnout, but there is a better way.
100%. Yeah. Eric, what are some of the lessons that you learned from mountain climbing, from being a pilot, from being an athlete, that you're actually implementing in your life, whether in your family, as a dentist, as a coach? What are some of those principles?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things in aviation is a checklist. So checklists are everything. When we're doing our pre-flight, people wonder why it takes so long for planes to take off at the airport. Well, if you see the pilots in there, they're going through an extremely detailed checklist. And when things don't happen according to that system, then bad things happen. So the value of systems is priceless. So there's lots of being prepared for disaster. That's another thing that we have to do in aviation. We have to be ready for that. We have to be as ready as we can for contingencies. If I'm flying a plane and I have an engine failure, I can't pull it off to the side of the road. We have to figure out how to get that plane on the ground safely. So going through those different procedures. But with mountain climbing, the biggest thing that I have found is if you don't know why you're climbing the mountain, you are not going to find the answer at the top. So I think we have a society that feels like we have to push and we have to climb and we have to achieve. And it's always the next promotion, the next step up the ladder. And some people find themselves in a role with way more responsibility than they ever wanted and way more than they ever need. So I like to help people figure out why they're climbing the mountain that they're climbing, and know their why, know their purpose, know what they're actually trying to achieve, so that when they do achieve that, it's worth celebrating and it feels fulfilling, instead of just being another, oh, I made it to the top, what's the next mountain?
Eric, this is beautiful. Actually, my my signature talk is about like how to document your processes and how to make sure they're followed by all. And the one on how to document the processes, I say exactly that. I start with the why. Like, you have to have a why that you want to follow, and then you can put your checklist and the systems and all that. But you can't, if you do that without really understanding your purpose, your why, what are you following, and even why to have those systems, then it just becomes boring, becomes so mundane, and you go nowhere. You're just doing checklists for the sake of checklists, or systems for the sake of systems, right? In order for you to differentiate what system is important, what is not, you have to understand your goal, your why, etc. Which is basically what you were saying in terms of, you have your systems in a dental practice, but then when you started your coaching, it's kind of, you want to have your systems, but you are so motivated and so you have the purpose of helping others, then you just basically then align the systems on how you can actually achieve that purpose. And anything that doesn't align with it just gets shoved away. But if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, you won't be able to just follow the systems that correctly will lead you to your goal.
Yeah, perfectly said. And, you know, at the end of the day, we also need to find ways to celebrate our waypoints along the way. If the only time you celebrate is at the top of the mountain, boy, it might be a long time in between celebrations. And celebrations refill us so well. If you ever remember being at I have a little niece that just turned 4 years old. And oh my goodness, I want to go to a 4-year-old birthday party at least once a week, just so I can, that celebration, everybody's so excited. You just feel good. It's loud, but you feel good. And I don't think we celebrate our accomplishments enough. I don't think we celebrate waypoints along the way enough. And we need that. We need that because it's fulfilling, it feels good, and it gives us energy to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. So give me some ideas that our listeners can take in terms of like, how can they celebrate in their business, personal lives? What would be like some examples of acknowledgements and celebrations that you will recommend?
Yeah, so we set some goals in our dental practice, and when we meet those goals, then we celebrate. Sometimes it's just a staff meeting where we provide food, or we provide some financial incentives, things like that. When I was doing my racing, I would only celebrate at the finish line. Well, sometimes getting through a big volume training week and actually celebrating by going to a movie with my family, or just taking some time to rest. Boy, that was a huge training volume day, and I'm supposed to have 1 day off. You know what? I'm going to take 2 days off, and I'm just going to rest, and I'm going to let my body feel better. So it's finding ways, finding the things that fill you back up, and then doing those along the way. Absolutely.
Yeah, but again, it comes down to like you achieve a certain purpose, right? Or you have known goals, smaller goals towards the goal, like when you're climbing a mountain. So I guess when you're climbing a mountain, you will have the different levels that you achieve, and you celebrate it, right, in some way or another. So that would be the good analogy for how you apply it into life.
Yeah, for sure. When we were climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, we made it up. We had a fairly difficult hiking day, and at the end of that day, a couple of the guides and myself and one of the other guys that were climbing, we just went off, and some people had built all these different cairns, stacks of rocks, kind of as waypoints. And so we would stand back about 20 feet and pick up rocks and try to knock over those little cairns. And man, we laughed and joked, and just the fatigue from climbing just kind of melted away as we could feel ourselves getting refueled by that community and by that joy and laughter.
That's beautiful. And I think that's another point, is like have fun and laugh, right? Don't take it too seriously. Absolutely. Wow. Eric, it's been a pleasure having you on this podcast. I mean, the information that you shared is so valuable, and it's genuine, and it's coming from, from points of experience, not just from reading a book and then decided to become a coach and help others. You really experienced life, and you're there to share your valuable lessons with others. So I definitely recommend our listeners to reach out to you. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, my website is the kind of the home base for me. So just Eric Recker, ERICRECKER.com. Links to my speaking, my coaching, the book I wrote, my blog is on there, and then all my social media connections. So that's the easiest way to start a conversation. Fantastic. And I'll include everything in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.